Welcome to Tattered Capes, where we explore the best of aging opportunities and the potential they hold for our future in a fun, meaningful, and engaging format.
Even though our capes might be a bit tattered, the superhero in all of us has a lot more resilient living to do. Catherine Owens is the owner of CLO Consulting, a trusted aging well authority and advisor in innovative senior living solutions.
I'm joined by Scott Fulton, longevity expert and owner of Home Ideations, a national leader in living environment design.
Welcome back to the Tattered Capes podcast. We have got a special guest with us today, Ms. Tara Ballman. Tara is the executive director of the National Aging in Place Council. Tara and I work together quite a bit because I'm the president of the council, and so between the two of us, when I say between the two of us, 99% of that means Tara, and 1% me in the background. Really kind of look after the day-to-day operations, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And Catherine, my co-host, oddly enough, is on the board of directors of the National Aging in Place Council. So between the three of us, we've got a little bit of a special treat here today to get some insights into what's going on in aging in place, learn a little bit about the organization and some other things that are going on. So with that, Tara, welcome to the Tattered Capes podcast. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be doing this with both of you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited that you're here today. Got a lot going on.
Yes, a lot to talk about.
We're going to put you on the hot seat right away.
Oh, boy.
So maybe the quick, because everyone always asks me, what is the National Aging in Place Council? Why don't you give me your version of what that is? Because it's probably a little bit different than mine.
So I say the National Aging in Place Council, we are a group of nonprofits and professionals who are really focused on collaboration and education, as well as advocacy on helping build communities, bring communities and resources together to really help aging in place, wherever that place may be, as comfortable and safe and secure for you for as long as possible. And then when that's not possible, what your next step is going to be. So just to help to plan and educate around that.
And that's beautiful, nice and concise. So you've done this so many times. That's the secret. And I think all of us on the council, if there's one common link that I see, it's that real passion around education, right? We're always, I think, within the professionals looking for places to educate ourselves, and certainly opportunities to educate the communities of people that we work with. And so maybe what do you see maybe on the consumer side from an education standpoint of maybe a place that you see a lot of interest or maybe you see it as need and both?
Oh, gosh. Well, our organization is built on what we consider the 5 pillars of aging, which is housing, healthcare, finance, transportation, and social engagement. So I think you could really kind of tackle a lot of issues within those 5 categories, but kind of a common theme that I see are people are just unprepared for what they think is going to happen from a financial perspective, thinking that Medicare is going to pay for everything, from a housing perspective, thinking if they buy into a 55 and up community, it's going to be ready for them to live out their final days. And, a lot of these communities, as both of you know, aren't really prepared to handle people as they progress through stages of aging. And the transportation, although that is probably going to work itself out as smart cars and self-driving vehicles happen, transportation will be less of an issue, but there are still people who don't live in the city or don't live on, main routes that's an issue for as well. So I just think overall that the unpreparedness of homes and housing and thinking people are going to pay for things or your family's automatically going to be there when you really can't always rely on that. You have to plan for yourself. So that's kind of the overlying theme that I see. Do you agree with that? I see Catherine shaking her head. Yes.
No, absolutely. When you say unprepared, I think that's really a broad word because people are unprepared, and all of us have seen this in our line of work. And that could be for many reasons. People don't know where to start. People don't even know what they should be looking at or concerns they should have. Or to your point, my daughter's just going to take care of me. But they don't know where to start. And then it's hard. They're hard topics to talk about, and they're hard topics to plan for. And I always say, whether or not you ever need the services that NAIPC or other organizations provide, take the time to at least educate yourself so that it does make that planning a little bit easier, and have a backup plan, because the backup plan is life. I mean, we all have this beautiful picture of how we want things to be, and then life happens, and that's when we're reaching out to people like you and NAIPC, is because now we have to pivot and look at other alternatives, and it's hard. It's hard to work, even know where to start. So I love that NAIPC really does encompass all these pillars of wellness, that not everybody needs everything, but most everybody needs something. And it really does cover a lot of different areas.
I always like to say, just like those old Hair Club for Men commercials, I'm not just the president, I'm a customer. I'm the same way with NAIPC. I'm not just running the organization. I'm also in that sandwich generation where I have a 6-year-old daughter. I'm 47 years old. My mom lives across the country as a widow. My mother-in-law is 87 here, also recently widowed. So I feel like I have a pretty good starting point of what the resources are. And even I sometimes am like, what do I do? Where do I go? So our Atlanta chapter has become some of my best friends, because they help me take care of my mom, and not just, the organization, but me personally. So people like that are in the similar situation, it's nice to have an organization that can address all of these issues, and like a one-stop shop for resources.
As both you talked there, I was thinking about, that's really kind of I think the impetus of why Catherine and I started the podcast, was because we come from different worlds, and you realize there are so many ways to go about this. And I think that's maybe, we all in the industry say people don't plan enough. And I kind of challenge it and say, because we don't tell them what to plan for. And I think generally the challenge is people don't know what to plan for. So they assume it's going to be the same, and everything's going to be incrementally down the same path. And I think, to me, when you say education, it's go wide in your education, get lots of breadth, and realize there are different things to do. Because, if you say you're widowed, that may open doors that today aren't open, right? After that happens, that's a difficult event, but it actually can turn out to be some new things. I would use my own parents as the perfect example. We kind of kidded that we never saw my mother as happy as after she was widowed. And that's not a reflection on their marriage as much as it sounds. It was, she didn't realize the freedom that came with just being able to do what she wanted, when she wanted, and not having to worry about anybody else. She grew up as an only child. So in many respects, it kind of came back to a turf she was far more familiar with and had forgotten, and life got pretty easy, and she was genuinely happy, and for all the right reasons, I'm happy to say. So yeah, it's an interesting time. And I think, like, as I look at it, and we see these conversations, is there are a lot of fun things to learn, right? If you take the attitude of, I want as many opportunities out in front of me, right? So if you look at, maybe Tara, I'll kind of throw this to you, say, if you could, have your mother back at your age and say, Mom, if you want to have these opportunities, what sort of things might you want to do today to help pave the way for opportunities for you in the future, instead of being in the react mode all the time, which is where obviously most people end up?
Yeah, I think in my mom's specific case, she was in that generation where everything was about her house and her household and taking care of others, but she didn't necessarily have the financial knowledge or know where all the important papers were, or just how to, she's a smart woman, she knew how to run things, but once my dad was gone, it was a little overwhelming to deal with grief and deal with your paperwork and find everything. And so I think if we could have planned that part better initially with her, just, becoming independent. And she had the same experience as your mom. Once my dad passed, it happened 13 years ago, she just found this whole new life. So I wish she had planned more for that new life so that she could enjoy it more instead of being worried about finances, or am I going to outlive things, or can I go on this trip? And I think that she can do those things, but she's scared because of just her mindset around those. So that's kind of where I would come from, my own personal mom's experience.
Tara, I love that you bring the word mindset up. That's something that, and you mentioned earlier advocacy. Mm-hmm. And we can help people plan, we can educate, doesn't mean they know how to go about it or implement it. And when you say mindset, I remember working with a family, and the lady had recently lost her husband, and she wanted to move into a community. She was looking at this exciting new lifestyle and opportunity, but she found the apartment she wanted, and she kept asking her daughter, what do you think I should do? And the daughter said, well, Mom, it's your decision. And she said, I know, but what do you think I should do? What they hadn't thought about was she had never made any of the big decisions. She had always had that sounding board and being able to rely on her husband to really help make difficult decisions. And this was the first time she was put in that position. And so when you think about maybe how decisions have been made, or how the dynamic of a couple and now an individual, but advocacy too is we are advocating for people, but we are also helping them advocate for themselves. And really it's, I tell people all the time, it's like, you have 81 years of being an expert on you. So we can provide information about how someone implements that, or what maybe someone is struggling with, or how they envision that next stage of life is going to be different for everyone.
Absolutely. And, that's another area that people don't realize they can get help in advocacy. There are patient advocates out there. There are people whose sole job is to make sure that you or your family member, your loved one is taken care of. And that's one of those resources that you don't know till you don't, till someone tells you. Yeah. And sometimes it might be too late, but they're out there to help.
Yeah. And I think the maybe the other area we can touch in on that we get all these different scenarios is where sometimes families close, right? And in both your cases, there are issues with family that's far. Well, I was the same, right? We were separated by quite a distance, and so, if you can write a check, that's helpful, right? But a lot of times it's
money.
Yeah, well, because money helps to grease the wheels to get other people to do work, but there's still that challenge of, well, one, say, well, there's people in the area. Well, hold on, I don't even know what I should be looking for. And I think that's, so maybe there's a place there to go for a second to talk about. So if we're trying to help a parent out, if you think about where would be locally, kind of whatever community they're in, what would be the places to start to look? That's like we kind of say, like a YMCA would be the place to go if you're looking for fitness anywhere around the country. Where would you say to start that essentially applies to most communities around the country?
Oh gosh, well, every community in this country has a senior center. That's an excellent place to go. Most of them are nonprofits. Some of them are city run, some of them are private run. That's a fantastic place for resources. Also, the area agency on area aging. What's the, what I'm trying to say? I always call them the
Area Council on Aging. Yes.
The Area Agency on Aging, and the ACL, the Community Living, American Community Living. Those are great places to go for resources as well. And then even on specific areas, if you're looking for transportation needs, there's the NAIPC, which is the National Association of Disability Transportation Centers. They all have local resources. There's a lot of nonprofits like ITN America who can set up transportation in any city in the country. So they're out there, and usually the AAAs and the senior centers will have that information for you. And actually, we also have members of NAIPC who run the Senior Blue Books, and that's another great area if you have one in your city to look for resources. Yeah,
and just maybe kind of just to let them know what that Senior Blue Book is.
Well, it's a directory of resources, mostly housing related, but there is a wealth of information in there and articles, and they publish it, I believe, twice a year. So I know Pittsburgh has one. There's lots in Florida. They're all over the country.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all over, and you can just go to their website, Senior Blue Books, and it will tell you the different cities that have a franchise or an affiliation. But really, Tara, that's one of the beautiful things about NAIPC is it is a national organization. And so there are local chapters, and there are ways people could go to the website and find a specific service or topic or someone within the organization that would be able to direct them to what they need.
Yes, absolutely. That's at ageandplace.org on our website. And the beauty of this is even if we don't have a member in that area, the network and the wealth of knowledge of our members, we will be able to find you help in whatever part of the country you're in. There are members that we have that are dedicated to helping connect those resources with communities and individuals. So that's another great resource. Yes.
Yeah, so I've certainly seen, and I think all of us have since the pandemic, a significant shift in recognizing a priority around the planning piece. We're seeing a lot more starting to happen now, thankfully. What are you seeing as some of the top changes that are happening now that maybe 2 or 3 years ago we were talking about it, but not much was happening?
Oh gosh, well, I think it's the introduction of AI and these automated systems into homes, not just from a social perspective of keeping people connected through Facebook or tablets or just learning how to do video conferencing, which is amazing. I do it with my mom and my daughter all the time, and they have created a special bond where they do it separately. And now she knows how to call grandma without me knowing. So I think that could be good and bad, actually. Stay tuned for that. But also just the home automation systems when people were so isolated from each other because we had to be separate. And then you didn't know, did mom take her medicine? Now there's medication management systems that did she take a tumble and fall? There's all sorts of programs and sensors that you can put into your house. It's not spying on people anymore. There's some that are run by airplane radar detectors that can sense what plane you're on. And if you're on a low plane for too long, you're not just tying your shoes, you might need help. Or sensors that show what you're not doing. I know my mom has 2 dogs now to protect her out there in the country in Atlanta. And if she doesn't open her door every morning and that sensor doesn't go off to let the dogs out, I know something's wrong because she is always going to open a door and let the dogs out. So it's just a lot of little easy ways that you can make sure your family is safe or your loved ones are safe. And even from a health standpoint, if they do need a little bit of extra monitoring, like at night, if you can't afford a caregiver all night long, there are cameras that can watch and sense when that person gets up. So the caregiver is getting a full night's sleep because they're not trying to constantly hear, oh, did I hear a door open? Is something happening? It instantly alerts. So there's just a lot of really exciting changes. I kind of geek out about the technology side of things because I find it really exciting because by the time I need it, I hope we're going to be living in a Jetsons world, but not quite like that, but like the modern version of the Jetsons, aging in place.
Well, and just
Well,
to
I
give you
think
an example of how these things cross generations. So on the weekend ride that I was out, we were stopped waiting for a couple of the other cyclists to catch up to us at a corner. And one of the guys' bikes dropped and the alarm went off. And so he's got a fall alert alarm on his bike. Mm-hmm. And he had to, I said, I have to call my wife to let her know that I haven't had a crash. Right. So I always look for these technologies that cross the generations. So, sorry, Catherine, I cut you off. But I wanted to jump in on top of you and push you.
Oh, no, that's okay. I love that, Tara, when you said, geeking out. There's so many tangible things we gain from that. And then there's those intangible things that we really weren't prepared for. And sometimes we don't think about as we're planning. And, the things like social and community and knowing that someone's checking on us. And I don't know how many times you've probably heard this where people say, mom doesn't want to learn about technology or dad doesn't want to learn about technology. I remember the first time during COVID that I did an education thing. It was for 39 communities across the country. And I did a screenshot of all the older adults that were on. And I thought, this is amazing because they can do it and it opens up doors. I mean, look at the door that opened up for your daughter and grandma. I mean, all these things that came out of it, that we're finding other ways to do things, and we're getting creative, and it's helping us learn and engage in all these ways that we didn't think were possible. But also we realize how much we need it and value it and that connection. And so not only getting the things in place that keep us safe or allow us to stay in the home that we love, but really things in place that we recognize give us quality of life and help keep us healthy, and active and engaged and learning. And I look at all those things that came from it. And yes, it was hard, but through it, there's a lot of positive that came as well.
Right. Right. And it doesn't all necessarily have to be advanced technology. Like if people are just, I'm not going to learn something, there's still ways. I love that you said, you just feel comfortable when someone checks in on you. It could be like a phone service. There are phone services out there that call, and if they don't get a hold of you, they'll call your family member. In my mom's case, she's got a little group of ladies from her church, and if somebody doesn't hear, then the next person tries to call, and if the next one can't get a hold of them, they drive over to her house and find out why she's not answering the phone. I mean, it's a little different in small southern towns, I know, but there's ways to make those kind of systems work for everybody, whether it's advanced or state of, basic Flintstones version.
Yeah, the community need really, again, crosses all ages, right? Whether it's the older adult or the child of the older adult or the grandchild, we all kind of thrive on that. Let me shift gears a little bit if I can, and talk about what's coming up here in October, National Aging in Place Week. Why don't you tell the audience what that's all about, Tara?
Gosh, it's always the most exciting time at NAIPC every year, the second full week of October, which this year is October 9th through 13th, I think. I don't have my glasses on, but it is always the second full week. And we really just pack the week full of education and programming. So we focus a topic a day. So Monday will be healthcare, kind of our 5 pillars going through the week. And then Tuesday, not only are we going to have our action-packed agenda, but it's the release of our book, our next book, which I'm so excited about. Our second publication, it's Difficult Aging in Place Conversations, of which Catherine is an author, and Scott, you were an author in the first one, which was just Aging in Place Conversations. So it's exciting to have another group of authors, another 28 members who are offering their expertise in another way. So we'll also be having those authors doing presentations, and if they happen to be local in your area, they'll be setting up presentations at senior centers and libraries and book signings. So stay tuned for that. It's exciting times.
Yeah, it's I think both, and I've got the digital copy. It's not out yet, folks, but depending on where, I think we're going to air this probably right around that time. It's got so many topics in it, which I think is good from a front end preparation. And we say what to plan. Well, here you go. Start wherever you want almost, and pick and start checking them off the list. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I wasn't involved in this group, but as you said, 28 authors, there's a lot of opinions, not just a lot of ideas, but a lot of opinions. Were there any of these topics where we're kind of going back to, we talked about earlier, where there's different ways to get at some of these things? Did you find, kind of each of you, Catherine and Tara, were the things you kind of said, well, that's a different way of looking at it that I hadn't thought before? Did any of those things come up during the several calls that you had?
Yeah, I think, the neat thing about it is going back to not everybody needs the same thing or wants the same thing, or there's different ways of doing it. And there's different ways that are different things that give people sense of purpose, or maybe that I always say something that's not working in their current situation that might be different for everybody. So even if you have 2 people that come at, or provide the same service, there might be nuances, or they might work at it a different way. But so being able to have different perspectives in a book like this is an incredible opportunity for the reader, because it is a book, but each chapter really is standalone. And a lot of them, Tara, you could speak to this, but a lot of them really support the other chapters too, because it's never just one thing. I mean, if you have transportation issues, does that impact, being able to have your social opportunities? Does that impact getting to the grocery store? So it impacts your diet, nutrition, whatever it is. But you can see behind Tara is the first book, the conversations. But with this book, and Tara and Scott, you could speak to this on the first one, but I love that every author put ideas on how to start the conversation, how to facilitate that, because these are not topics that people want to discuss every day. And they're topics that typically mean change or getting out of our comfort zone. So it's maybe the authors have come at the conversation differently. And so there's different ideas on how to approach those conversations. So I think there is something for everyone in this book, or as Scott you said, as you need it, there's different topics. And Tara, the range of topics better than anyone. And I would love for you to share, because there's so many different topics, but there's so many different things people need.
There are, and probably if someone reads the book today and then reads it again in 10 years, they're going to get something different from it, because their situations are going to be different at that time. And one of the things I do love is that all of these folks, and I will say a majority of our members at NAIPC, are in this world because of a personal experience, because they had something happen with a loved one, or they had to care for someone. I mean, we all have aging parents. A lot of times that's the motivation. I lost my father 13 years ago, and it was due to a hospital error. So we had to deal with a lot of other issues. And my motivation comes from just helping other people not have to make those hard decisions in crisis mode. So that's always my perspective, but somebody else comes at it from a completely different angle. So they're going to be offering different tips that, my story didn't allow me to see, but their story did. So that's why I love just bringing everybody together. And we're really tackling questions like cultural considerations as someone's aging and as they pass, and, families that marry into each other, and things that are just so different that people don't talk about and don't know how to start the conversation. And then there's also my section in the book is on Social Security, when to take it, when's the best time. My neighbor said I had to do this, but even, this is another topic where I was like, I'm an expert in this. I got Social Security. I learned so much. Like, I had no idea, other than like this 10-year number that's not actually a real number. So, it's really interesting to see. We have even something we didn't address last time is more of the healthcare needs. So we have someone talking about, like, not just difficult, but uncomfortable conversations like pelvic floor physical therapy, things that help with incontinence that people think they just have to suffer, but you actually don't. There's actually physical therapy that can help fix those situations. And even recovering from a surgery. And we have an orthopedic surgeon talking about joint health. So we're really covering everything, how to prepare your house as well, before surgery, after surgery, as you're aging, and how to really start those conversations with your parents too. Because a lot of times I find my mom doesn't tell me things because she's too embarrassed that she'll tell a stranger. And it's like, oh, if you just told me that 5 years ago, I could have helped you. But it's also me not asking the right questions either. So this is really to help get those conversations started.
Honey, the example I often use when I'm talking to new clients in particular is that we're going to be talking about toileting, just so you know.
Yes.
And it's the light icebreaker, but it's real, right? It's kind of like, it's a way of kind of communicating, like, for me to be able to help you, like, around accessibility needs. We can't avoid those topics, and it's always the things that we don't want to talk about. And once we get into it, somehow there's this weight is lifted, and they're actually kind of fun conversations, because, again, you go back to, well, we all don't do it the same way. I just kind of assumed everybody did it just like me, and you kind of pick your topic, right? But that's kind of that one that you really don't have that conversation. I'm not saying you need to have it at dinner, but And for the child, right, for the adult child, like, they're the last, probably feel like, well, I'm the last one that wants to ask my mother or father about that. And kind of like, well, get over it, because you're going to be part of that if you want to be able to help them.
But there are even basic parts to that. That's like, we did a topic like, are you a pusher or a puller? Do you push yourself up or do you pull yourself up? Because that makes all the difference in where your grab bars are placed. You wouldn't know that if you just went to Walmart and got a grab bar and put it on your wall. So
Exactly. That's you hit that one on, because everyone wants to say, well, where should the grab bar go? Well, it kind of depends on how do you do it today, right? And then if someone has arthritis, well, which is your good arm, right? Let's build it off of your strong side, not your weak side. There might be more, it might be easier for someone to install it here, but that doesn't make it the right place to go. Yeah. It's so what's your take in terms of your experience with both of you? Because I always find this when I'm in an audience to ask the question, do you find it's the older adults or the children of older adults find it harder to start the conversations?
Well, I would say in my experience, the older adults just avoid the conversations. And it's hard having the conversation on each end. And going back to the mindset, even as a couple or as I call key influencers, that might be a family member that's trying to help educate, make decisions. You do have different mindsets. You do have different things that are important. I look at couples and one might want to stay in the home and one really needs social. And so they're looking at things completely different. And so because of the differences, that could be why conversations are hard. And they're just not comfortable conversations for any of us. And Terry, you said your mom using these services. I've been doing this for 20 years and I just went through these conversations with my mom, and because I had avoided them, even though I've spent 20 years telling people to not avoid them. And I just had to tell her, these are going to be hard, Mom, but that weight is going to be lifted and there's going to be a peace of mind knowing that we've addressed it, so that when we need to address it, I know what you want. So there's no easy way, but hopefully with this book or just reaching out to an expert through NAIPC, people can connect or get information on how to start difficult conversations. And sometimes it's just like you said, Scott, break the ice. It's not about, we're going to talk about this. It's tell me what's important to you.
And going back to, I was going to say, going back to your question, Scott, I find that it kind of goes by age group, like the super seniors, the older, they're very private and they do not want to have the conversations. But my mom's age group will talk about anything all day, including what they had for dinner and lunch and what the cutlery looked like. So that was my answer to your question there.
Yeah, it's interesting, right, to understand the difference. And I think the other part of this as well is it's hard a lot of times for adult children to put themselves in their parents' place, because and they're forced to make decisions that they generally are not prepared to make. In terms of, when I say not prepared, because they don't really understand the values, right, that their parents have and why they have them, both from a historical standpoint, but also kind of what reality is for them today. As adult children, we've been focused on raising our own kids, and we're looking at our parents as kind of that lighthouse as our guide, and that starts to change at some point, and that gets flipped around, and that's pretty uncomfortable for the adult child and the parent, right? So, another conversation to avoid, I think. It happens easily. And I think, Catherine, your point is a really good one. And that's kind of why I kind of use that other one, is I get drawn in, or a lot of times I'll get drawn into couples who want to do something, but they get stuck. And so they need some third party to come in and just kind of say, listen to his story, listen to her story. Are we crazy? And what options do we have, because we're having a hard time, we're kind of just stuck here and we need some help. And that's doesn't matter what the topic is. I think that's one of the best places to engage a professional. It just kind of helps grease the wheels of conversation, right? Poses the right questions for you to go away and work on, and then let's get together in a week and you'll be in a much better position to start to make some decisions.
really quick, Scott, to that point is one of the things I tell people is because conversations are hard and they don't want to have them, the need does not go away. The need or the concern that they had, by doing nothing, that is a decision. It's not always the best decision. But to the point of why we educate, why we advocate, why we want people to be prepared is we've all heard it. As an adult child, we say, well, it has to be mom's decision. And mom doesn't talk about it because mom says, I want to maintain control and independence. And time again, what I see is because people don't have conversations and they get to the reactionary point, mom loses all control and now the kid is forced to make a decision and they don't know what mom would have wanted or what was important. And so maintaining control, maintaining independence, advocating yourself starts with educating yourself so that you can make decisions, so that as a family, you know what mom and dad want, what key values they have. And so as hard as it is to have those conversations, that's the best thing you can do for your parents or for your adult children, is an act of love to sit down and have a difficult conversation so that you can help support each other, have the best quality of life, and make good decisions. Sorry, you got me on a soapbox. Educate yourself.
Yeah. So Tara, let's wrap this up. Just respect everybody's time. So let's kind of recap on a couple of things. National Aging in Place Council, where do people find that?
Yes, you can find us online at ageinplace.org. And we also have very active social media accounts on Facebook and LinkedIn if you're a professional.
And maybe where the chapters are located around the country for those who happen to be in a city.
Oh gosh, well, we have about 18 of them right now. Long Island, Atlanta, Chicagoland, San Francisco, and Washington are our largest. We have a bunch popping up in Florida starting in October, actually. That's another big event in October. We're launching in Southwest Florida, Southeast Florida later. We're all over California and growing in Texas and the Boston area. There's a chapter, and we have a bunch that are growing out there. So we're all over the place.
Great. And I think that really applies both if someone works in this space and says, I'd like to get connected into a team. This is ultimately really what we're here for, is really to help teams come together and work together, right? And the book launch again is, you gave the date as October
11th, the Tuesday of Aging in Place week. It will be live on Amazon.
Great. And so there's going to be two books. They look a lot alike, actually, if I look at the covers of them. The last year's book was called
Aging in Place Conversations. And this next
this
book
one
is Difficult Aging in Place Conversations, the extra hard ones.
Yes.
Does it matter? Do you have to get one and then the other? Can you read them in any order you want?
Any order, and actually any part of the book can be read in any order, whatever most applies to you.
Yeah, and they're not the same content either, by the way, for folks, right? These are very different books. So,
yes.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Tara. It's been fun to do this way. We're usually having our regular meeting right now, our weekly meeting right now. So this is fun to be able to do this. And Catherine, as always, great to dive into these conversations. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I would just like to say, as people go through this, it is a journey. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make some wrong decisions. Just give yourself grace and offer forgiveness, separate the person from the disease and, move forward in a loving and forgiving way. And after the situation is over, also don't beat yourself up or what you could have done. Just give yourself forgiveness and grace is my parting words.
Yep, we are all learning as we go.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Well, thank you, Tara. It really it's been fun for me just to have this as kind of a different conversation, because to your point, Scott, I'm like usually sitting on a board meeting and we're going through kind of details in business, but just to be able to have these conversations is helpful for all of us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take care of your tattered cape, and get out there and get some good positive conversations going in some fun new places. So thanks.
Talk
Take
soon.
care.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Tattered Capes. To learn more about the show, visit tatteredcapes.com and subscribe on your favorite platform. Until then, stay curious and remember, the superhero in all of us has a lot more resilient living to do. See you on the next show.